Hello. Wase wangu. How are you guys? I hope you're doing well. I am here representing the US Diaspora, the Budanyos channel, and today I have yet another story for Kenyans. A hot story for Kenyans. Yes. So, I am going to talk about a personal friend of mine who is miles and miles away from me. Um, should I say maybe let me just say this version in English. Let me say it in English because it's really not anything to do with Kenyans as such, but it's good for Kenyans, but Americans can also benefit from this. But my very good friend who lives in another state, uh, I have known him for years, and let me say that before he moved to another state, he lived in the same state as me. So that's when I got to know him because we went to school together. We were neighbors. Um, we um, also worked together um, in the same place, and for a period of maybe a year and a half, I want to say. So I got to know him fairly well, and I was new in the country as well at that time, fairly new. Um, and of course I had other friends, but because he was a neighbor and we worked together, and we went to school together, we became really close, really really close. uh, but obviously we never dated. Just friends, with no benefits, just friends. Anyway, he ended up moving to another state, and that's a whole story for another day. But what I want to say is that over the years, we've maintained communication. Every so often we do maintain communication, and all is well. However, he has gone through a lot of drama, a lot of drama as a result of, or rather, as it pertains to marriage issues and childbearing. So, um, without saying much, because I don't want to disclose his details, because some are giving it away, some are actually literally giving it away, so I'm going to be judicious in the way I explain the details. But long story short is that he went back home and he married he married this lady, and he has always wanted children. you know it has been his desire to get children. So he married the lady, and because he was still home, he impregnated her and then came back, left her pregnant. And of course, they continued communication. He had taken her home to his village, and she stayed there. And, he catered for her while she's here. She was there and she was pregnant, and everything went fine. And then it was time to deliver. And the lady goes to the hospital. And honestly, on my part, I don't blame the lady of how things went. It's a little inconsistent, but I kind of believe her testimony, and I'm not being lenient because I'm a lady. But long story short is, it seemed like she delivered the baby, but something happened, which she couldn't quite explain exactly what happened. But long story short, she ended up going home without the baby. Apparently, the doctors, nurses, they told her that she lost the baby. The baby died. Um, and she never was shown the fetus, or if she was shown one, she was never shown the baby, and if she was shown one, it was one that was already dead. Young lady became distraught. Can you imagine her having to explain that to her husband? You know, it's like her husband could not add one and two together. It couldn't make sense. You know, it is only about a year or two later after that incident happened. Also, when my friend told me the story, also it kind of didn't add up. It didn't quite add up. But about a year or two later, when there was a documentary on the Kenyan television about women losing their children in the hospital is when it made sense to me, is when I came to understand that it probably is true whatever she was saying, and she was taken advantage of, and someone really literally stole her baby, and they gave her a dead baby, or told her that her baby has died so they could sell this baby to some family somewhere. Unfortunately unfortunately but when I understood that, I was really grieved for this lady, because she was young. From her testimony, she was unaccompanied to the hospital, and because she was unaccompanied, um, she gave birth to the baby. It was a bit tumultuous in the process, but she could not give exact details of what happened. All that she knows, that she came home without a baby, and unfortunately, and I got to know this after the fact. Anyway, I'm not someone who advises my friend or anything as such. Sometimes I just listen. It pays to pay a year. But I did remember, I had remembered telling him that maybe it's not the lady's fault, even though things are not adding up. And then the fact that she was unaccompanied, that could mean literally anything. But anyway, long story short, my friend could not convince the lady to give her details so that he could understand exactly what happened. So to him, he thought that the lady did something, and you know, maybe she aborted, or maybe sold the baby. It just didn't add up to him. I don't blame him, but it is what it is. So, long story short, he ended up, because the story that the lady was saying was kind of not adding up. Maybe if it was adding up, I don't know, maybe he would have been more gracious. But because it wasn't adding up, it wasn't making sense to him, he ended up telling this lady, go back to your parents, don't come back to my village. So basically, he divorced her. And that's a whole other thing. I am not going to meddle into it. I don't agree with that decision, but it is what it is. So, anyway, my friend and I just kept keeping in touch every so often. Sometimes it could go even 3 years we haven't spoken, but then, we speak, So, anyway, life happened. And then later on, this friend approached me, of course, on phone, and he told me that he had married another lady back home, yet again. So he married that lady, and it seemed like everything was going fine for a while. Obviously, he made her pregnant before he came back, um, and the lady ended up delivering twins. So uh, maybe twins or triplets. I think I think it might be, I forget the details, but it might be triplets, but it was more than one birth. Anyway, long story short, he ended up now crossing between the US, the diaspora, and Kenya, diaspora and like, he just, that was now his life, because he had a wife back home, and not only just a wife, but he also had children. So he kept going back and forth, and in between we would talk sometimes. And I remember at one time I had called him when he was home with his wife, and we were able to talk, and they were looking basically for advice with newborns, how to take care of newborns. I love children, by the way. I love children, and newborns, taking care of newborns is the best. Is the best for me, and uh, I love taking care of newborns, and I I learned certain things that are interesting, and had shared with my friend when he told me he's pregnant. And I said, maybe you should do this, you should do this. So when he got home and they were having some little trouble, he thought that he should call me. And so when we were talking, he told me to tell him what I told him before, to tell it basically to the wife so they can do it. And I was telling her, or telling them what to do. And it seemed like they agreed, but eventually the wife could not do it, for long. But anyway, I had talked to them, and everything seemed happy. He came back to the US, and we obviously kept contact from time to time. And everything seemed okay, seemed okay, seemed okay. Until one time, he seemed to like evade me for a while. You know, the one you play kind of phone tag. He looks for me. I don't find him. He don't find me. And I look for him and I don't find him. And usually it's me who is harder to find, if you get what I'm saying. Like he can be looking for me for a long time and not find me, but usually when I look for him, it doesn't take me long to find him, you know, because I guess with his work and his schedule and everything, it's not that complicated to find him. But this time I was finding a hard time finding, real hard time finding. It took a while. And then the next time we were talking, I don't know what I mentioned. And within seconds, he was able to tell me what happened. And it's a sad, sad story indeed, because what happened is, unfortunately, he found out that those children, the multiple births, were not his. And I'm like, how did you find that out? I guess he did a DNA test. And he had to do it not because he suspected, but because he wanted to bring the children, of course, with his wife to the US. He wanted to file for them, and that takes DNA to confirm that this is indeed your offspring, and of course, the marriage certificate to vouch for the marriage. And that was his intention. That's what he wanted to do. And then he found that the wife was a bit reluctant, taking him round and everything. And at the end of the day, she did not want that DNA test taken. But he had to do it because he really wanted to bring his children over to the US. And lo and behold, when he did the DNA test, they two or they three were not his. Believe it or not. Yet he had reared them for a few years because they were no longer newborns now. They were a bit older. And I'm not sure how old they were, but they were a bit older. You know, he had reared them, he had taken care of them for a few years. And then lo and behold, he finds that they are not his own. And I'm like, well, I mean, according to the delivery, wasn't it off schedule? You know, like based on the time you were in Kenya and, anyway, he seemed not to suspect that something was wrong because the dates kind of added up. If you know what I'm talking about, the date from conception to delivery kind of added up. But again, men and even women, when you're not in the medical field, you might not be able to understand some things uh, correctly. You may not be able to, and even when you're in the medical field, sometimes if you don't pay attention to certain details, you can miss a lot. So, uh, the conception period the conception window is a certain amount of time, and and not only that, some women are also um, like kind of off the regular conception period. They can conceive off of that period. But anyway, not to go much into that, it's easy to make a mistake. Besides, like multiple children, twins, triplets, quadruplets, um, quintuplets, whatever, anything more than one birth, more often than not, they get delivered early. More often than not, because of the complications that are associated with uh, carrying a full-term pregnancy, they will have to be delivered early, either through C-section or normal delivery, but more often than not is through a C-section. I don't remember the details of what exactly happened, but what I can say is that um, perhaps because this is something my friend is coming to know years, several years after the birth of these babies, there is a chance that he did not know enough detail or for him to suspect. There is a high likelihood. But basically, according to him, he tends to think that while he was home in Kenya trying to impregnate this lady before he comes over, during that time is when the lady also went and basically laid with someone else and got pregnant from that other person. And that is worse, don't you think? I think that is even worse. Like, you're already there. It's not like you had gone. Oh my goodness. You are already there and somebody's just leaving you at home. I don't know what time she went. I don't know enough detail. Oh my goodness. I don't even, I mean, some ladies, for heaven's sake, for heaven's sake, what manner of behavior is that? Like, why would you do that to anybody, but more importantly to yourself? Why? But why? So, anyway, he found out that the children are not his. And now he basically has to start from square one. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that, people? I don't know what you all think, but it's unfortunate for my friend. It's unfortunate for the children because that's the daddy that they knew. This lady, I don't even know what to talk or to say about her. It is sad, unfortunately, but it is what it is. What would you do if it were you? What would you do? Obviously, he he has he has a big challenge because if he accepts the children, he may not be able to bring them to the US. But at the same time, he's not in Kenya. And if he leaves this lady in Kenya, obviously now doubt has risen. And if doubt arises, he'll be here thinking, oh, maybe the the baby daddy is messing up with her again because the trust is already eroded, and once trust is out, oh my goodness, you can't rebuild it. Anyway, it's hard to rebuild it. And let me not say you can't rebuild, but it's really, 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 really super hard to rebuild it. You know, it's complicated. But I mean, when you think about the burden of rearing children that are not yours, it can be huge. It can be huge. But at the same time, some people, out of the kindness of their heart and their graciousness, they will say, nevertheless, I can be the children's father. And I'm not the author of my friend's life, and I'm not going to tell him what to do, but I'll share a personal friend or relative story who was in a similar predicament, but this time he was in Kenya. He lived with a wife and they had on and offs with the wife, you know, that part of where you disagree, you separate, you agree once again, come back together. So in one of the disagreements, the wife went and got laid by someone else. And when she got laid by someone else, she became pregnant, and then they reconciled, you know, before he noticed. And she ended up delivering in his home. She ended up delivering in his home. So the guy raised the child thinking that it's his child. And I don't know what happened. Um, about 4, 5, 6 years later, that made the guy have to do a DNA test. And lo and behold, he discovered that that's not his child. But accolades to the guy because, and I talked with him in person, he shared the story with me. He recognizes that that's not his child, but he chose not to abandon her. He chose not to chase her to the mother. He left it alone, and he, to date, as we're speaking, he's taking care of that child as his own. I mean, more power to him, more blessings. Oh my goodness, that is absolutely awesome. And the child does not know that that's not his father. That's the only father that the child knows. So unless the mother comes and tells this child that that's not his father, the child is not going to know. And even if she or he knows, and I'm deliberately just messing up with the gender here, because I don't want to give selling details, but if she happens to know, she might reject her own biological father because basically he abandoned her and she doesn't know him. But the person she knows is this guy who has taken care of her for a long time, with loving, tender care of a father, you know. So, what would you do? What would you do? For me, I know what I would do, and I'm not giving anyone license to mess up with my life. Anyway, I mean, I'm not that kind of person who's gonna go out and do such things. But if, say, my husband comes home with children that are not his own, I mean, children that are not my own, but they belong to another woman, I don't see any problem with taking care of them, whether or not they know I'm their mother. That's me. That's me. The choice is yours. But maybe it's my love for children, but I also have some compassion for people in general, for other, the thing is, um, if he's respectful and apologetic, it makes things way smoother. But if he comes with, then it makes it harder. Not saying that I can't do it in that case, but it makes it way harder. But from my knowledge of children and who they are and who they grow up to be and who I am as a person, I don't think I would abandon or neglect them. Instead, I would give them equal care as they are my own, um, and they wouldn't ever have a reason to blame me for anything. May God help me, um, because that is what I'm saying, and I believe with all my heart that that's what I will do. But I'm also asking for God to help me should such a thing happen, that I may be the best that I can be. Um, yeah. So, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What would you do? Because I mean, they didn't have to be um, continents apart. They could just be in the same house. For instance, if he didn't come to the US when he made, quote unquote, made her pregnant, if he stayed in Kenya and she had already gotten pregnant by another man, the same thing would happen pretty much. And he would raise them thinking that they are his own, like he did. And if he had basically moved to Kenya and didn't have to come to the US, he could have raised them to adults, not knowing that they are not his own. So I don't know what you think, but over here in the US, and I'm sure in Kenya, but maybe it goes so much unreported, there is so much drama. There's so much drama, and especially with those kind of relationships where you are continents apart, it can be really, really hard. It becomes easier to trust somebody when you have established a relationship with them for a while, but not everybody keeps or sticks to the right thing. A lot of people end up taking the easier route for their own reasons, but that is not right. So, leave me your comments down below to let me know what you think, um, or if you have any questions, and feel free to share, like, and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining the US Diaspora The Good News channel. I'll see you next time. God bless you. Bye. Bye bye.